Great. So people see you today, right? You're doing leadership interviews. You have a leadership organization, coaching organizations. What do you wish people knew about your journey that they may not know to get to where you are today?
My goodness, that is a phenomenal question, Doug. And I'm not sure anybody's ever asked me that, to be real honest with you. Well, when I think about young leaders, and I was one for a really long time, I think that there's this myth that we look on at leaders we admire, or leaders we see, or we listen to on things like this, guys that have achieved a certain level of success, again, however we define that, in their life. And I think the thing that we underestimate, and I definitely would say this is true in my story, is the amount of pain that those leaders had to endure to get to where they are. That hands down, when you see a leader who has reached a level of, again, success, however you define that, I can promise you that they have endured pain like crazy to get there. And there has been a series of very, very, very painful and difficult choices that they have had to make in their life and with their team and with their organization to get to the mountaintop that they are standing on now, that we see them on today. And so I think, again, looking at my life, that is true. And it's only just been, in the last couple of years that I've really, truly realized that every time we want to go up, we got to dig down. And we got to, there's going to be another level of pain and another difficult decision or two or three or 10 that we're going to have to make in order to move up in our leadership journey.
Yeah, that's interesting. So on your recent podcast, Identifying a Gap in Your Team, I thought it was phenomenal. And you talked about how, the fun side of leadership is when you're on stage, you're doing the conferences, you're doing these interviews. But obviously there's so much in the behind the scenes that cause that pain. How do you, in a healthy way, actually process that pain as a leader?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And quite honestly, Doug, you and I can think of people who didn't know how to process the pain of leadership well. Matter of fact, I'll go so far as to say this. I am confident that every leader that you and I look on and see who has a moral failure, who has a stumble and fall, who something comes out in a news article or whatever, a story breaks on them, that there's some sort of indiscretion or something happened, every time, I promise you, it will always go back to unprocessed or undealt with pain in their leadership journey. I promise. And so here's what that means. I think in leadership circles today, and certainly, man, listen, if you're a young leader listening to our conversation today, and I'll define young as anything 40 and under, because I'm 40 and a half, so there you go.
Nice.
Whatever, it doesn't matter your age. Listen, work hard on you. Like we have to figure out healthy outlets. We have to figure out people that we can talk to. I like to call it people who couldn't care less, couldn't care more. So what do I do? How do I process pain? And what do I recommend for people who are listening to our conversation today? I think, number one, we do have to have healthy outlets. People, listen, if you're listening and you say work is your hobby and you don't have any hobbies, and I define hobby as anything I can't turn into a job. So I used to write as a hobby, and then I started writing books. Well, that's not a hobby anymore because I get paid to do it. Not much, but I get paid to do it. So a hobby, so collecting baseballs is a hobby for me. I'm trying to figure out how to turn it into a job, but I can't yet. It's a hobby. So here's the deal. Leaders, we need hobbies. Like we need to have areas in our life where we're not the boss. Areas in our life that are just, we go fish or we do needlepoint or what, it doesn't matter what your hobby is. And here's what I learned about hobbies. Nobody's allowed to judge your hobby because it's your hobby. So let it be your hobby. So we need pop-off valves. I actually talked about that on the Matt Keller Leadership podcast recently. And, so every leader needs those pop-off valves. But secondly, I think some of those pop-off valves for stress and so forth come in conversation. Like we've got to have people who are, outside of our world, disconnected, a step removed from our world, who, again, as I like to say, couldn't care less and couldn't care more. But people who just care about us and are able to listen, and we're able to yell and scream at, and toward, and just, be ourselves and be frustrated and process through that. I'm a big proponent of counseling. I think it's a big deal. What I learned a long time ago, man, in my early 20s was counselors aren't just for crazy people. They're for imperfect people, and therefore we all qualify. So, good news, we're all imperfect. So you qualify to go see a counselor. And again, I think a counselor is somebody that you pay to couldn't care less, couldn't care more. And here's what I love about counseling. And I went to a counselor monthly for about 8 years in a row, just to deal with me and deal with pain that I had went through in my past and so forth. And, one of the things that I loved about my counselor, I used to tell this to my wife all the time, was that, my counselor was someone who, for a whole hour every month, would take me to school, and I was the subject of the class. So like mental health therapists are trained to help us understand how the dots connect in our mind and in our physiology and our psychology. And so what I loved is I loved going to school an hour a month and studying myself and having an instructor who would look at me one-on-one and go, so Matt, do you hear how when you're saying that actually connects to what you said over here? No, like we're just not good enough. We're not God designed us to be able to figure it out all by ourselves.
That's good.
We're not supposed to. We need others. So we've got to be able as leaders to process the pain that comes through and into our leadership journey.
I absolutely love that. Along the same lines, when it comes to personal growth, I've been around your teaching on the S-curve and making the jump, and maybe you can give a brief summary of that. But what are some of the jumps that you've had to make, or significant lids you've had to break through in your leadership throughout the years?
Well, I think what I'm learning more and more, and what I've experienced over the last 2 decades of doing this since I was a late teenager to where I am today at 40, I have realized that what gets us to the top of one phase of our life or phase of our leadership or season of our leadership cannot, will not, and should not get us to the top of the next. That it just won't. And what I've discovered is oftentimes the strength of one phase of growth in our life and leadership is the weakness in the next phase. And so being aware of some of that, not always, but being aware of some of those things allows us to really be able to look on and go, okay, what are the changes I need to make? And unfortunately, I think the trend for most of us as leaders too often that we fall into is we start to prepare too late. That what I teach in our coaching is the best time to prepare is when things are going great. The problem is when things are going great in our leadership or in the organization or the team, department, whatever that we lead, we're so busy harvesting that we're not thinking about the seeds we ought to be planting for the next season of growth and where we're going. And so until what ends up happening is we get to a point where the harvest starts to plateau, we start to decline a little bit, and then we start looking around going, oh no, well at that point it's kind of too late to start planting seeds, so what do? We end up circling back around. And so this is where we get caught in like this leadership rut, kind of this vicious cycle, what Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, would call the doom loop. This is where organizations and leaders too kind of get caught in that. So if I could encourage listeners with anything today, I would say, listen, think that through. Like especially if you're in the middle of a harvest, like if you're in rapid growth and things are going great and it's up and to the right and everything you touch turns to gold, take a few minutes, schedule an hour, 90 minutes in the next month. Go to a coffee shop with a legal pad and say and ponder 4 questions, because here's 4 great questions for leaders to think about and ponder. Priorities, skill sets, disciplines, and temptations. Priorities are going to have to change in the next season. Skill sets, what skill sets need to change for the next season of my leadership? Disciplines, what new disciplines or existing disciplines need to get better? And temptations. What temptation? Because when you go up to the next level in your leadership, those are the 4 things that are going to get impacted. Priority, skill sets, disciplines, and temptations. Wow. And drill down on those and say, man, if this thing doubles, and again, however you measure what the next level for you is, what priorities are going to have to shift in my life, in my time, in my schedule, in my priorities, whatever that looks like? What skill sets do I need to hone or learn? What disciplines do I need to improve or sharpen? And then what temptations are going to come to me then that I need to start working on and preparing for now? Those 4 questions will help you.
Wow, that was fantastic. This probably, you may have answered it with that, but I'm curious, do you ever deal with, obviously there's leaders that don't make the jump, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of that as well. Talk about, I mean, do you ever get insecure or worried that you won't be able to make the jump? Or is this your game plan to say like, hey, I know I'm going to have to make the jump, but if I'll do these 4 things well, I know I can make every jump I need to? Or do you think eventually you'll hit, what are your thoughts on that? Do you know what I'm asking?
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question. Again, I think there's probably, I would venture to say, resident inside of the heart of every leader is this sort of this little fear. It's not a big fear necessarily all the time, but this little fear that at some point we're going to reach homeostasis. Like at some point we're going to level off and go, oh no, like this is as big as my feet are ever going to get. Like I'm never going to be bigger than a size 11 shoe. Like this, like I've reached my capacity as a leader. But here's what I think. I think that especially for those of us who are followers of Christ, I think that we're never supposed to stop growing. And I think there's always expanding. Now, it may not be a numerical expansion or growth. It may, every season doesn't have to be double of what the last one was. Again, in whatever category you want to call it, double. Fulfillment, success, monetary, attendance. Again, pick your digit. It doesn't matter. But I think we're going to always grow and expand. And, that really is my heart, which is honestly one of the reasons why I wrote the book about teachability. So when I look at my leadership and I go, man, do I ever fear not being able to, make it at the next level? It drives me, number one, to humility. And I go, I have to stay humble as a leader, because if I don't, I'm gonna stall out. And that's what happens. We lose our humility and we let pride set in, or fear starts to overtake us, or insecurities, the roadblocks I talk about in the book, Key to Everything, where I talk about teachability, but if a leader will combat those roadblocks and really dig in, myself included, there's nothing that can stop us. Like we will always continue to grow and go to the next level.
Great. So, we'll talk about the book in a few minutes, but one thing that I love that you said in the Key to Everything, along these same lines, you talked about having confidence as a leader and battling insecurity. And in the book, I thought it was interesting. You used an example where you were in a room of leaders and you felt like you didn't belong in the room. But then recently, I saw you leading a coaching group and you took a picture and your hashtag was, I was born for this. And so you went from feeling like you don't belong into the room to basically feeling like you own the room, not in an arrogant way, but what has that journey been like, and how important is confidence to a leader, and how did you go from insecure to confident?
Man, that's a phenomenal observation and great question, Doug. Here's what I think. The room, when I tell the story in chapter 3 of the book on insecurity, I talk about being in a room full of what you and I would know as household names, in the church world today. And I had the opportunity, when our church was less than a year old, to kind of get invited into this space with some of these just nationally known, world-known leaders in the church world. And, every time I'd be in that room, these guys would say, Matt, here's my cell phone number. Call me, man. Let's hang out. Want to stay in touch, whatever. And I would go home and I wouldn't do anything with it because I was too insecure. I'd be like, no, who am I? And my church is small and I'm nothing and I'm just young. And, and I'd kind of talk myself out of it. My insecurity was robbing me of an opportunity. And so, that was the thing that honestly, man, for about 8 years, it really affected my leadership. And I missed out on a lot of good opportunities because of that insecurity. And so it wasn't until 8 years later that a friend of mine, we were having breakfast at Cracker Barrel and he looked at me, I was telling him that, and he looked at me, he goes, Matt, how long are you going to let your own insecurity keep you from this opportunity that God's given you to interact and build relationship and friendship and learn from these guys that you desperately need to be learning from to prepare you for the next season of your leadership? And man, it was a slap in the face in a good way. Like it was such a big wake up call for me. And so I don't know that confidence just grows in our life overnight. I think confidence is something that is developed. And again, I think there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And for me, that difference is confidence is submitted to the Lord. Arrogance is not. And so, so even insecurity and confidence, I wouldn't even necessarily put those on the same spectrum, to be real honest with you. Insecurity can rob us of our confidence. So to zoom forward to the picture of me leading in that room with 56 pastors for our brotherhood coaching, for senior pastors that we do, in my hashtag, I was born for this. That is a God confidence of me looking on going, I know what I'm called to do. I know what I'm responsible for. And I know that I'm called and anointed by the Lord to coach and pour into leaders. And so that is me reflecting on, like I'm on a mountaintop right now because I'm functioning in who God made me to be. And that's the takeaway, I think, for some of the listeners today, perhaps, is listen, you're in your sweet spot when you walk in it and you get done. You may be physically exhausted, but you are on top of a mountain. Like you feel like $1,000,000. Like that's a strength. That's a strength in your life. So that was where the hashtag for that picture came from.
Love it. Along the same line, so we live in a world of self-promotion, right? So I have a website, Doug Smith Live. You have Matt Keller online, the Matt Keller podcast. So how do you balance that? Just because you hear some leaders say you should never have a blog with your own. It's all about you. It's all about you. And then how do you deal with that tension in your life?
Well, I think it's a great question. And again, I think it comes down to your heart. And sometimes it's impossible for us to judge our own heart. Other times it's not. And that's where a couple of things. Number one, I think we constantly have to be staying on our face, submitted to the Lord and saying, God, if I'm doing any of this out of self-promotion or ego or pride or arrogance, then Lord, like convict me, like here is free reign to get in my business because Jesus, that is not going to glorify you. And he's not going to bless that. But additionally, then I think we have to have people around us who can intentionally tell us the truth. I talk about this in Key to Everything, where I talk about feedback. That the further we go, the more successful we become, the more we must invite voices that are close to us to give us feedback. And here's how I say it. Everybody needs a list. Now, not everybody's on the list, but there needs to be a few people on the list, especially if you're a leader or a public figure or public speaker, or if you influence people, you need a list of people. It doesn't have to be a long list. And here's the good news. We get to pick who's on the list, but everybody needs a list of people who have complete free reign to pull us aside and go, hey, that tweet you sent out yesterday, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but man, it kind of sounded a little prideful. Like you good? Like, what was your intention again when you tweeted that out? Okay, if you don't have people, and again, here's the caveat. Here's the catch-22. The more successful you become, the more powerful you become, the more influential you become in your leadership, the harder it is for those people to give you that feedback. Simply out of intimidation, simply out of busyness, simply out of who you are, their position. Most of the time you probably pay most of those people at some point. And so here's what that means. That means, leaders, there's only one cure for this. We must keep asking for it. Like if you're a pastor, you should be asking your list. Again, you get to decide who they are. 2 or 3 people. Your wife should probably be one of them, or your spouse. Maybe one guy on your staff, and then maybe like a peer that pastors another church across the country in another city or something. You should be asking them on a consistent basis every 4 to 6 weeks to look at your message on the weekend and say, give me 3 things that I could do better. 3 ways, 3 stories, or 3 angles that when I said it this way or did it this way or inflected my tone this way, 3 things you change about my message from last weekend. You know why? Again, not because they don't want to share it with you. It's just hard. So we have to proactively ask for it. And like what I talk about in the feedback chapter is the people who are best suited to give you feedback in your life, leader, are the people who probably benefit the least from it and have the most to lose from it. So when your spouse looks at you, husbands, and says, do these jeans make my rear end look big? Okay. You are the best person to give that feedback, but you have the most to lose. Don't answer that question. But do you see what I'm saying? Like it's the people riding in our car. But most leaders aren't secure enough to be able to invite that in. Invited feedback is the best feedback.
That's absolutely phenomenal. In fact, when I had the privilege of visiting your church, that's what my key takeaway was, just the quality of conversations that you built in your culture to be able to have those. So thank you for being an example for that. We've talked a lot about it already. We've mentioned the book 100 times, the key to everything. But tell us about it. Why did you write this book? What is the key to everything? Give us an overview.
Yeah, well, the key to everything is really a book that centers around one big idea, one big concept, and that is the concept of teachability. Teachability, the willingness to be teachable in our life. And, teachability for me has always just kind of been one of those life themes. I just really have, I just have always tried to embody and be a leader and be a person who's constantly learning, constantly teachable. And I define teachability in the book, Doug, as two things: desire to learn multiplied by willingness to change. Desire to learn times willingness to change equals our teachability. So pick any area of your life, and what you come up with is you can bring it down to two things. What's your desire to learn? And multiply that by your willingness to change, and that'll tell you how teachable you are. So if you're a husband and you're on a scale of 1 to 10, your desire to learn about being a better husband is a 2, and your willingness to change is a 3. Well, on a possible 100, as a husband, you're only at a 6 in your teachability. Well, it's not hard to tell that husband and wife, they're going to struggle because my man isn't teachable. But if you take that same husband and say, what's his desire to learn how to get better as a husband, to an 8, and his willingness to change to an 8, suddenly that 6 just became 64. Well, now that husband is going to get better in that area of his life. And that is true in every area of our life. That is the idea of teachability. And so here's what I think. It's not that hard work and, a good work ethic and a good education and where you came from and your skill set, charisma, it's not that all of those things don't matter to our success. It's just that there's one thing that matters first to our success, and that is teachability. I've said for years, give me someone who's teachable and we can change the world. Give me someone who already knows it all and we're stuck. We're dead in the water. And it's so true. In our world today, the people who are the most teachable are the ones who are the most successful every time.
Yeah. So in your experience, is teachability, I'm assuming you wrote the book because you think it's something that someone can grow in. Tell us about how can someone grow. They've never been teachable, or maybe they're on the far end of the spectrum and they're prideful, they never are teachable. How can someone actually start, walk us through some of the systems you wrote in the book?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think teachability I think some people are born kind of with a learner gift. Like if you're familiar with the Strength Finder stuff, I have a learner gift. And so I think there are some people that from a gift mix level, just like to learn, and are eager to learn more than others. But this goes way beyond that. Everybody can become more teachable. And what I contend in the book is that the ultimate desire for our life is that teachability is not just a once in a while event, but it actually becomes a lifestyle. That the most successful people are the ones who have developed a lifestyle of teachability. So how do we do that? To answer your question, the first thing we have to do is we have to identify what keeps us from teachability. And so that's what the whole first part of the book is about. It's identifying what I call in the book the roadblocks, and there are 5 of them that I talk about in the book, roadblocks to teachability. Those things that are often invisible in our life, often even hard to see, that kind of creep up on us, and we'll be cruising along just fine, tracking toward success in whatever area of life we want to be more successful in and reach our full potential in. And then all of a sudden it's like we hit this lid, like we hit this roadblock. Well, what happened? What is that? What's keeping us from success, from reaching our full potential? Well, those are the roadblocks of teachability, and I talk about 5 of them in the book.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So if people want to get the book, get connected, where can they go to learn more about the book?
Yeah, the place to go to find everything, about what we're doing, the Matt Keller Leadership Podcast, the book, The Key to Everything, is my website, which is mattkelleronline.com. mattkelleronline.com. You can find out all of our coaching for pastors and churches, for business leaders, Next Level Church there. And so Matt Keller Online. And then the one thing we do have there, Doug, that is probably of interest to some of your listeners, is I recorded 3 15-minute videos that a lot of leaders are taking their leadership team at work or at their school or their small group at church. They're taking them through, and each one of those centers in on the 3 parts. There's 3 sections to the book. So it's kind of a 15-minute, all of that's for free. Once you go to Matt Keller Online, follow the link to the book, and you'll find all of the resources and videos. And churches, if you're listening, pastors, you can do a series in your church. All my sermon notes are on there. Everything you need, graphics, bulletin inserts, everything you need is on there. It's all free. We just want to help churches utilize the key to everything to make their church better.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, I'll include links to everything Matt just mentioned in the show notes, so you will have instant access to all of that. While we're on the subject of writing and coaching, I know that's something a lot of people want to do with their lives. You've done it. Let's start with writing, and then we'll talk about coaching. You've written 3 books, at least that I'm aware of. What have you learned about writing, the writing process?
Yeah,
overall?
Well, writing is a calling. I love what my friend Mark Batterson says about writing. I don't love to write. I love to have written. And
yeah.
Writing is a labor of love, and I agree with Mark wholeheartedly on that. So I don't necessarily love to write. I'm called to write, and I write. But I love to have written. That's the best. And so here's the biggest thing. For the person who's out there who's listening, who's going, man, I always dreamed of writing, or I feel like I have a book in me. Yes, awesome for sure. Here's the number one hurdle you got to get over. Anytime I meet with someone who's like, hey, I know you're a writer. How do I do this? Where do I start? Here's the where do I start question right here. Here's the answer, Doug. Here's where you start. You got to get rid of the filters. The biggest problem that anybody who wants to write anything significant, from a blog post to a book to a whatever, an article or anything, is we put up too many edits and filters in our mind. And so we'll start typing and we'll go, no, I don't like that. No, I don't. Okay, you got to not do that. I call it a mind dump. Like, you got to get it out of your head and your heart onto paper or onto, the screen. Like, and the way you do that is don't edit. Don't filter. Just sit down and just start typing. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about misspelled words. Don't go back. Like, refute. Just start typing. Just just get it out. Get it out. Get it out. You can edit that thing 100 times, and you will. The biggest thing is get it out of here in your head onto paper, onto the screen. Because once you get it out, you can edit it 1,000,000 times if you need to. The problem is if you never get it out, you can never do anything with it. And that's what they call writer's block. So the best way to combat writer's block is write. Yeah. Like, put your rear end in a chair. Don't get up. Like, for real, when I'm in a writing zone and I get in a flow, like, I don't even want to go to the bathroom. Like, I run. Like, I get up and I sprint to the bathroom because I'm like, I cannot miss. Like, I cannot break up this flow. Like, I got to go. I got to get this out of my head. I have to get this onto paper. It's that important. Don't filter. So in terms of writing, that's the biggest step. And then here's the other thing I would say is concerning the writing call or, the writing passion is write. If you're called to write, you have to write every day. Writers write. Speakers speak. Plumbers plumb. Like, do your thing and stop convincing yourself and making excuses. Nobody has to read what you're writing, but you have to write. And so, because it takes a while to develop your voice in writing and to learn who you are in your writing voice. So if I were you, if I was a guy who said, Matt, I want to start writing, okay, here's what I would do. I'd force myself to sit down and write 500 words a day. Well, what do I write about? Anything. Tell me about what you did yesterday. Yesterday, I went to the park with my kids, and it was fun, and my kid fell off the swing, and he scratched his knee. But just write. Just start writing, and it sounds silly. Nobody has to read it. But see, again, those are all of the kind of the muses that fight against us that say, oh, you got to write something important. No, you don't. Just start writing. So important.
That's good. I guess on the back end, so you had this dream in your heart to write a book. You birthed several books. What has writing a book or books done for you? Were you surprised by anything? Was it everything you thought it would be? Now that you're an accomplished author, what has that done for you?
Well, the thing about writing a book is it really is a labor of love. It's not easy and it's not glamorous. Just if you ever think that writing a book will make you special, just go to Barnes & Noble and walk around. You are one in about 150,000 just in that one building.
By the way, I saw The Key to Everything in Barnes & Noble's on Monday night here in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I thought you'd be excited. Well, that makes me happy.
Did you buy it?
I already had a copy, so.
Sure. Yeah. Excuses. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thanks for the support. So here's the thing. I think that, what a book does is there are a lot of benefits to writing a book, and there are a lot of drawbacks to it. The drawback is that once you say something in black and white and write it down and print it in a book form, it's there forever. Like, it's timed, stamped, it's dated. Like, so that information can't be changed easily. And so, that can be a frustrating thing for communicators, especially in a world that moves quickly in terms of information change because of technology. So that's kind of a downside to it. The upside is there's still a prestige to it. That it's a calling card in a lot of ways. Writing books is not a get-rich-quick scheme. For every author who makes a living doing this, there are a whole bunch of us who do not. But books give you credibility, and so the fact that I've written 3 books in my life, it's a step into the door. It is a credibility piece. And one final thing: not as many people read books as you think they do, and not as many people read books as want us to believe they read books. And the way you know that is because when you write a book and then you start telling a story that is in the book, and people act like they've never heard it before, they haven't read the book. Yeah, which is fine, but it's just something. So anyway, those are some fun facts for authors, man.
I love that. With the time we have left, I want to get a little more personal
Sure.
with questions. And I guess one is just on the subject of character. I think character, something I've been thinking a lot about lately is just how does one develop their character? And obviously character is important to you as a pastor. It's important to your staff as leaders. How have you developed your character? And then how do you develop the character of your staff to make sure that they're able to sustain the call on their life and not lose their family and everything else around them?
Well, unfortunately, in leadership circles today, character is one of those sort of unspoken things that we sort of take for granted with each other, and I think that's a problem. Like I actually think that undermines a lot of us. And here's what I mean by that: so often in leadership, and certainly even for spiritual leaders like us, we want the power of leadership. We want the anointing of leadership. We want the ability to lead. We want the influence that comes. The problem is all of those outward external things of leadership that we desire and seek and want to improve and develop all sit upon the foundation of our character.
That's good.
And so we have to, it is necessary, and I'm learning this, the further you go, the more successful you become, the more experience you have, the more influence you're given, the more diligent we have to be on driving our character down as deep as it will possibly go. And I use the illustration of kind of like a skyscraper, that the higher you want the building to go up, every time the building goes up another level, we have to go down another level deeper in the foundation. And every time we drill down, there will always be inevitable pockets of unhealth, is how I call it. Inevitable pockets of unhealth in the foundation of our life that just are. There's just these little air bubbles in the cement, so to speak. And when you drill down, those air bubbles are exposed. Well, it's our responsibility then to find them, fix them, fill them, and get them repaired, get them fixed. Why? So that we can go up and sustain the building. There's nothing worse than a building that's taller than its foundation can sustain it. And you and I could point to leader after leader who we've seen that be the unfortunate case of. And so, going up is not the hard part. Being willing to drill down, that's the most difficult part of leadership development. And that's all about our character.
In your book, you talked about just the fear of added responsibility. And as you've grown, as your platform's grown, as the church has grown, I'm curious on the family and how have you kept your marriage intact, and how have you been a great father? What do you do intentionally to keep your family?
Well, the first thing you have to recognize, Doug, great question, is that none of that happens by accident. Anything that is great in someone's life that we admire is only great because they have done the hard work that nobody sees to make sure that it stays a priority in their life. So I have a great marriage. I really, really, really do have a great marriage. My wife and I love each other, and we love being together, and we spend a lot of time together. We talk all the time. Like people, Sarah was telling someone recently about a vacation we took, just her and I. We do a mommy and daddy only vacation once a week or once a year for a week.
I was like, that's nice.
And, yeah, come on. And it's called date night. And so we did this, and we were at one of those all-inclusive deals, and it was just real quiet, just nobody around, just like for 7 days, just like her and I quiet. And the person she was talking to said, "Wow, you must really just like spending time together." Yeah, for real, like we just really love each other. We love spending time together. We work together every day. Her office is right next to mine. It's great. But here's the point: we work at it. We work hard. And so one of the things that I think is so tempting in leadership is to get moving, especially in seasons of rapid growth and success. And this is a warning, perhaps, for some leaders listening today, is we can get moving so busy in whatever season we're in that we sort of put those things that in a sober moment we would say, boy, I want to be great as a dad. I want to be great in my marriage. I want to be great in, my personal character, whatever. We can put those on coast. And it's like riding a bike. You can coast for a little while if you've got some momentum and speed. But if you don't pedal that thing, certainly periodically, it's at some point it's going to start to wobble. And at some point it's going to actually fall over and there's going to be damage done. And so one of the biggest temptations in seasons of success and rapid growth for leaders is that we put the areas that you and I would say are the most important to us on autopilot and coast. And then we wake up one day, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 2 years from now, and go, oh man, like my marriage is wobbling. My personal life is wobbling. My personal health, my physical fitness, again, pick your area, my kids, that relationship is wobbling. So leaders, I think that the warning I would say to you is you gotta prioritize it. And if there's one thing I feel like I have done well, and Sarah and my assistant Sherry and our team, we call them Team Keller, kind of really help us to do well, is to make sure that those big rocks, those non-negotiables, remain in as non-negotiables. Because in seasons of success, non-negotiables can become now negotiables, and that's where we enter the danger zone.
That's so good. Last few questions. If you could go back and have coffee with 20-year-old Matt Keller, what would you tell him?
Well, I actually do a whole talk on that. I'll have to dig it out. I don't think nice. I have a clean recording of that. But
it'd be a great podcast episode. I would love to hear that.
But if I could have lunch with my 20-year-old self, one of the things that I think I would say is, and I know this is one of the points of that talk, is enjoy the ride. Like, relax, enjoy the ride. And I think I would tell myself, I know I would tell myself in no uncertain terms, all of those dreams that you have in your heart, they're going to happen. It's going to come true. It's going to take longer than you think it's going to take or should take or want it to take. But God's got you. He's sovereign. He is working out his plan. Relax, Matt. Let the ball come to you. Enjoy the ride. Settle in. Take more naps. Watch more baseball. Enjoy your kids. Like it's gonna happen. I wish, Doug, I could tell my 26-year-old self that, because I think I was so excited and so determined and so just wound up to make something happen, because if I don't, I'm going to be old one day. And I'm gonna it's like, you're good, man. Like I promise you, it's going to happen. Smell the roses, like enjoy the ride, because I think as a 20-something, I forfeited a lot of moments to be completely, really, truly present in my life and leadership journey that I wish I could get back. That I look over and I go, man, I wasn't there. I was there, but I wasn't there. I wasn't present because I was so got my eyes on the next hill, the next mountain, the next future, the next attendance barrier, the next growth, the next whatever level, that I wasn't fully present where I am. And I think I missed a lot of opportunity to really celebrate how good God was in my life and leadership.
That's so good. That's really encouraging to me. I'm that guy. Go, 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 go. So thank you for that. Out of everything you've accomplished so far in your life and ministry, what are you most proud of up to this point?
I swear I'm not just saying this, man. I think I'm most proud of the fact that we have achieved a level of success that I'm humbled by, and I haven't lost myself in the process. Like, I just look at a lot of friends that I have, a lot of people I know, leaders you and I admire, and I've gotten to see behind the curtain of some of those people, and I swear, I don't know how to say this without it with it, and let it sound humble, because I swear that's what's going on in my heart. I think Sarah and I have fought really, really hard to be us. Like, I think we've done a pretty good job of being authentically, like, true to ourselves, not losing ourselves, not losing our marriage, not losing my sanity or my health. I take my day off. Like, we rest well. Like, I swear to you, I'm going to go to a spring training practice tomorrow and watch the Boston Red Sox hit baseballs and get autographs. Like, I don't work that hard. I swear to you, like, so I think I'm most proud of just the people who are closest to us. I think actually think we're pretty authentically who we say we are in front of the camera. Like, I actually think we've done a pretty good job of being that. And I don't know how to say that more humble. I don't know. That's my heart, man.
Yeah.
And I fear for leaders who lose themselves. What does it profit if we gain the whole world? We chase the trophy, and at the end of it, we don't even like who we are or who we've become. Like, that's my greatest fear. I think that's the ultimate regret.
Wow. It's one of the best answers I've heard to that question. And maybe you answered this one. My last question, second to last question would be, looking back on your life, at your funeral, what would you want people to say about you? What do you want to be remembered for?
It probably runs parallel to that.
Yeah.
I would hope that those who knew me best would stand up and say, hey, listen, all of you who think you knew who Matt Keller was, you actually did. Like, he was actually the same guy up there as he is down here and back here and in my office on a daily basis, or in my home with my boys. Like, my mother-in-law lives with us, and she has for 8 years now, and it's a phenomenal arrangement, and she's just the perfect house guest. She's wonderful. She's kind of our family manager. And I would hope that my mother-in-law stands up at my funeral and it tells anyone who's in attendance, listen, the public Matt that you knew, I got to see at his worst in our home with his wife and with his kids, and he was the same guy. Like, I can't think of a better compliment. I just can't think of a better compliment.
That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And then just open-ended question, in case I didn't ask something that you would want to cover, but just open-ended, if you could give and leave our young leaders with any advice for leadership, what would it be?
Well, I'll circle all the way back around to this idea of teachability.